Why fear or not fear Islam? And is every Muslim really a terrorist, as many people think? This faith is a highly controversial topic in many countries. Many politicians use every Muslim as a tool for intimidation and political battles, usually just to gain votes. But what do Muslims really want? How did Sunnis and Shias emerge? Why do they continue to shape the course of history? And what does their everyday life look like today? This is Islam, impartially and factually about history, symbols, customs, love, and also hatred. All videos from the This Is series are available ad-free now on my Patreon, Paul Black. If you're interested in the topics on my channel, start following me for more content. Now sit back and relax, we're starting. It is the 7th century, and we find ourselves on the Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia at the time was fragmented into often hostile tribes. Tribal leaders vied for succession. There was a significant gap between wealthy merchants and poor residents. And the region was polytheistic, lacking a unified belief system. This created space for new ideas. A charismatic leader, Muhammad, fully named Muhammad ibn Abdullah, inspired others with his sense of justice and humanity. One afternoon, the then illiterate Muhammad meditated in the cave of Hira near Mecca. According to his account, an angel appeared to him and recited a verse, now recorded at the beginning of the Quran, a book every Muslim holds sacred. This revelation is considered the beginning of Islam itself. At the time, many wealthy merchants in Mecca profited from pilgrims visiting the Kaaba shrine to worship various deities. Islam, rejecting polytheism, posed a significant religious and political threat that these merchants could not control. As a result, the entire Muslim community, or Ummah, was gradually labeled as dangerous. Its members were persecuted, physically attacked, and imprisoned in Mecca. Muhammad was forced to relocate to Medina, where he established the first official Muslim community. This migration sparked widespread expansion among ordinary people across the Arabian Peninsula. People were drawn to the idea of a single God, Allah in Arabic, and to Muhammad's justice, charity, and solidarity among believers. All were equal before God, and they resonated with practices like daily prayers, fasting, and honesty in dealings. By the year 632, more than 20 years after the first revelation, around 120,000 people had embraced the faith. Muhammad died from an unclear cause, speculated to be an infection, fever, or possibly poisoning. After Muhammad's death, a question arose: who should lead the Muslim community? Some believe leadership belonged to Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law Ali and his descendants. These followers became known as Shias. Their leader is the Imam, considered a spiritually chosen figure with special authority to interpret God's will and guide the community. Others emphasized a collective selection of leadership, independent of family lineage. These are the Qarn Sunnis, who make up about 85% of today's Muslim population. Their political and religious leader, the Caliph, is more of an institutional head than a spiritual one and is not considered infallible. The differences extend beyond leadership to interpretations of events and rituals. The ideological divide deepened in 680 during the Battle of Karbala, where Ali's son Hussein was brutally killed. This event remains central to Shia identity. The first leader after Muhammad's death was Abu Bakr, a caliph chosen by Sunnis. His rule, lasting until his death in 634, was crucial in maintaining the unity of the Muslim community. During these 2 years, the first military campaigns beyond the Arabian Peninsula took place, stabilizing and uniting the Islamic State, with the faith beginning to expand beyond its borders. Historically, relations between Sunnis and Shias have been marked by rivalry and violence, which persists in some areas today. For instance, in the 16th century, the Safavids adopted Shia Islam as the state religion in Iran, leading to tensions with Sunni Ottomans. Shias eventually became influential in Iraq, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, and parts of Lebanon and Yemen. In most other regions, Sunnis have historically been the dominant branch. In the 8th to 10th centuries, Islam expanded into North Africa, Central Asia, and Europe. Between the 13th to 15th centuries, Islam took root in South and Southeast Asia and Africa. Today, Islam plays a key cultural and political role in countries like Nigeria, Somalia, and Mali. The Muslim community is growing in North America and Europe. One of the largest Muslim populations in Europe is in France, mostly descendants of migrants from former French colonies such as Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Millions of Muslims also migrate to Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, Britain, and are prominent in the Balkans. Globally, the largest Muslim population is found in Indonesia. There are 2.5 billion Christians in the world, almost 2 billion Muslims, and just over 1 billion Hindus, the same number as non-believers. Muslims follow the 5 pillars of Islam, which are the core principles and practices of their faith. These pillars include: this involves the daily recitation of the fundamentals of faith in one God and the Prophet Muhammad. Performed 5 times a day at fixed times, these prayers involve specific movements and recitations from the Quran. This practice emphasizes regularity and a conscious connection with God. Fasting during the month of Ramadan is one of the most symbolic and spiritual practices, during which Muslims refrain from eating, drinking, and bad behavior from dawn until sunset. This is a form of social aid in which Muslims donate a portion of their wealth to those in need. It helps reduce social inequalities and strengthens the sense of community. Family is key. Parents and elders are deeply respected, and the younger ones must help them. Other principles include refraining from slander, respecting other faiths, striving for peaceful conflict resolution, and undertaking the pilgrimage to Mecca. The position of women in Muslim societies varies depending on culture, traditions, and legislation. In Pakistan and Bangladesh, women have served as prime ministers. In Saudi Arabia, women only recently gained the right to drive. In Turkey, Indonesia, and Malaysia, women enjoy broader rights and often hold significant public positions. Veils, such as the hijab or burqa, have become symbols of religious identity in some countries, while in others, they are subjects of controversy. For example, in Iran, women face strict dress codes, while France was the first European country to ban face-covering veils in public. Many Muslim-majority countries promote equal access to education for all. Iran has one of the highest percentages of women in higher education. On the other hand, in some regions controlled by radical groups, women are denied access to education and employment. The questions surrounding women's rights and their status in Islamic societies remain controversial and diverse. A key factor is that cultural and political influences often play a greater role than religious principles themselves. The food must be halal. The term halal, originally Arabic, means permissible or legitimate and refers to anything that complies with Islamic law known as Sharia. Most commonly, halal applies to food and beverages, but can also pertain to other aspects of life, such as finance, cosmetics, lifestyle, and behavior. In terms of food, halal specifies what kinds of food are permissible for Muslims to consume and how they should be processed. Permissible foods include meat, fish, fruits, vegetables and dairy products and grains. Forbidden items include pork and its byproducts, meat from animals that died by non-ritual means, and blood. Alcohol and any products containing it are also prohibited. Halal food must not come into contact with or be contaminated by forbidden items. In many stores, separate sections for forbidden products are available for non-Muslims. Animals intended for consumption must be slaughtered in a ritual manner called zabiha. This process involves reciting the prayer, Bismillah, in the name of God, and then quickly cutting the animal's throat to minimize suffering. The blood must be fully drained as its consumption is forbidden. Halal extends beyond food to carry broader ethical and spiritual meanings. It encompasses cleanliness, fairness, and respect for nature and animals. In cosmetics, products must not contain alcohol or animal-derived ingredients from non-halal sources. In finance, halal banking prohibits interest and investments in unethical businesses. Overall, halal represents a way of expressing faith and living a life in accordance with Islamic principles. Social customs vary across regions and cultures, but the core of the faith emphasizes family, solidarity, and helping others. Ramadan, the month of fasting, is a cornerstone of Muslim life. It is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar and the holiest period during which Muslims commemorate the first revelation to Muhammad. The fast, called Sawm, was established as a duty to bring believers closer to God, to practice patience, self-control, and compassion for the less fortunate. From dawn until sunset, eating, drinking, smoking, and intimacy are prohibited. During the entire month, believers dedicate more time to prayers, reading holy scriptures, and helping others. People who feel intense hunger or thirst during the day are encouraged to practice patience. After sunset, Muslims gather for what is known as iftar, a communal meal that begins with dates and water, just as it was traditionally practiced by Muhammad. If you travel by train in Muslim countries during Ramadan, you will also receive dates and water after sunset. Fasting is not mandatory for children, pregnant women, the elderly, the sick, travelers, or those performing heavy labor. However, all those who cannot fast are encouraged to perform another good deed, such as donating food to the poor. Islam as a religion emphasizes peace and coexistence. Alongside traditional Islam, there are groups that interpret religious texts in a radical way, such as Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. These groups promote an ideology that often involves violence and terrorism. They enforce strict interpretations of Islamic Sharia law, which prescribes severe punishments for certain actions, such as apostasy or adultery. Conflicts linked to radical Islam affect many parts of the world, including the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. These groups often operate in areas of political instability and poverty, which enables them to recruit new members. The history of Islam has been marked by many conflicts that often had a religious undertone. The term jihad is frequently misinterpreted as holy war. Its actual meaning is striving on the path to God, but in practice, radical groups interpret jihad in a militant way. Islamic radicals engage in conflicts to gain power and impose their version of Islamic law. For instance, the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, the war in Afghanistan, or the Syrian civil war often include religious motives, but primarily stem from political, economic, and cultural differences, with the religion being exploited as a tool for mobilization. In modern times, global terrorist attacks play a significant role in shaping the perception of Islam worldwide. It is essential to distinguish between radical groups and the majority of Muslims, who distance themselves from and condemn radicalism. Muslims pray 5 times a day, following a set procedure. These prayers, known as salat, include prayer before sunrise, at noon, prayer before sunset, just after sunset, and prayer at night. Prayer itself is a strictly structured ritual performed 5 times daily. It begins with wash their face, head, hands, and feet. This purification process is meant to prepare believers for communication with God. Prayers are always performed facing the Kaaba in Mecca, Islam's holiest site. Before praying, believers silently declare their intention. The prayer begins with the call, "God is the greatest," accompanied by raising hands to the ears or shoulders. Prayer includes several positions that are repeated in sets called rak'ah. It begins standing with the recitation of the opening chapter of the Quran, Al-Fatiha, and additional verses. This is followed by a bowing position called ruku, during which the phrase, "Glory to my exalted Lord," is repeated. Then comes prostration and a deep bow with the forehead touching the ground. This symbolizes humility and submission to God. The final verses are recited while sitting. After a concluding greeting to both sides, the prayer ends. The exact prayer times vary depending on geographical location and season, as they are based on the position of the sun. In mosques, prayer times are usually displayed both visually and acoustically. Typically, a digital schedule on the wall shows the precise times for the day. Most mosques also use a simple calendar listing the times for each day of the month. Most believers rely on the muezzin, who calls to prayer through the adhan, a call made from the minaret. In modern mosques, the adhan is often broadcast through loudspeakers. It is the Holy Book of Islam and is considered the direct word of God as revealed to Muhammad through the Archangel Gabriel. It is written in Arabic and divided into 114 chapters called surahs, containing 6,236 verses, ayat. It is not just a religious text but also a primary source of Islamic law and morality. Muslims believe that the Quran is the ultimate and unalterable message of God, continuing the revelations. The history of the Quran dates back to the 7th century, when the Prophet Muhammad began receiving revelations in Mecca. This continued for approximately 23 years until his death. Initially, the words of the Quran were transmitted orally and written down on bones, palm leaves, or leather. After Muhammad's death, everything was compiled into a single book during the rule of the first caliph, Abu Bakr, and later standardized under the third caliph, Uthman, who created a unified text and distributed copies throughout the Islamic Empire. The book itself contains legal and social norms, guidelines for prayer, fasting, and other rituals. It serves as a spiritual guide for Muslims, shaping their daily lives. Some consider it a literary masterpiece due to its complex structure, poetry, and rhythmic recitation. It includes stories of many prophets, such as Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and others. Jesus is not recognized as the Son of God, and his mother Mary has an entire chapter dedicated to her. It is generally believed that Jesus brought God's message, but that his teachings were later distorted by Christians. They are usually separated from urban areas and oriented towards Mecca. The faith emphasizes simplicity and prohibits the depiction of people or animals. Graves are typically simple and dug into the ground so that the deceased can be buried directly in contact with the earth. The deceased is placed on their right side, facing Mecca. A coffin is not mandatory, and in many Muslim communities, the body is wrapped only in a white cloth shroud. This underscores the equality of all individuals upon entering the afterlife. Although decorations such as flowers, candles, or photographs are generally considered inappropriate, families sometimes place simple plants or shrubs on the grave as a symbol of life and growth. The modesty of the cemetery also serves as a reminder of the transience of life. Some cemeteries have special sections for children or martyrs, known as shaheeds, who died defending the faith or in armed conflicts. Upon death, the burial process begins immediately, as Islam prioritizes burial ideally within 24 hours of death. The deceased's body is cleansed through a ritual washing performed by close relatives of the same gender. The body is then wrapped in the shroud and prepared for the funeral prayer, which usually takes place in a mosque or an open space. Afterward, the body is transported to the cemetery, where a grave is dug to allow the body to be laid on its right side. The grave is then filled with soil, and those present may offer silent prayers. Funeral rituals emphasize humility and hope for forgiveness of sins and entry into paradise. In Islamic tradition, respect for the deceased is paramount, and family and the community often continue to pray for the deceased in the days and weeks that follow. Mosques serve as spiritual centers, not only for prayers but also for education, gatherings, and more. The largest and most famous mosques include Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, with a capacity of 2.5 million people; Masjid al-Nabawi in Medina, known as the Prophet's Mosque, founded by Muhammad himself. Its iconic green dome houses his tomb. Faisal Mosque in Islamabad, Pakistan, designed to resemble a Bedouin tent, with a capacity of 300,000 people. Other significant mosques include Hassan II in Casablanca, 105,000 capacity, the Sultan Ahmed Mosque in Istanbul, 63,000 capacity, and Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, 40,000 capacity. In the modern world, prayer rooms are also found in airports, universities, companies, schools, and other public places. In countries with a majority Muslim population, public prayers are widely respected, whether it involves pausing work during the day or adjusting schedules in schools and institutions. The arrangement of a mosque is full of symbolism and purpose. Sometimes, separate spaces for women are included, depending on local traditions. The most significant place is the so-called mihrab, a niche in one of the walls that indicates the direction of Mecca. The earliest mihrabs in the early stages of the religion were simple, merely to show the direction. With the spread of Islam and the development of art and architecture, they became more ornate, featuring decorations, calligraphy, and mosaics. Another important feature is the minbar, a raised pulpit used by the imam to lead the Friday prayer. It consists of several steps, and usually has a small platform at the top. The main prayer space is always large and open, often covered with carpets, without pews or furniture. For example, the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi contains the world's largest hand-woven carpet. It was made in Iran by more than 1,200 weavers over approximately 2 years. The carpet, weighing 35 tons, was transported to the mosque in 9 sections by air. On site, it was meticulously joined together without visible seams. Interestingly, it has over 2.5 billion knots, and its design combines traditional Persian motifs with modern elements. What do you think about Islam, its architecture or symbols? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate a like, sharing it with others, and subscribing to my channel. You can find more videos from the This Is series ad-free on my Patreon. Some episodes are also on my YouTube in this playlist. And don't forget to check out the slow walk videos with chill out music.